some of your questions if you have any.
That's excellent, Benno. Thank you so much for that. It's a nice balance as well. I'm just realizing now between the flora and fauna segments that we presented this morning. So I'm very pleased to say we've achieved that balance. Just in summary, just a couple of quick ones from my side. I mean, both speakers have shown how important biodiversity is, and particularly in the Mene region and KSA. It's just because you have such a limited number of species in terms of flora and fauna that makes them so important. And the studies that are being done by UNESCO and companies such as Laths are that important, that we have a good knowledge of what biodiversity is all about. And the second point I took away, Benno, was one we hold very close to our own hearts, was something along the lines of teach the children. We know that the boomers have done enough damage to this planet in exploiting resources, but I think if we have to plant that seed, if you don't mind the intended pun there, with children, so that they have a better appreciation of, and I'll be a little corny here, Mother Gaia, planet Earth itself, because the snapshot from space doesn't show any country divides. We're one planet, one people. And just the third point there about I had it in my mind about trees itself, and it's actually come up in one of the chat questions. And actually, it's a nice segue. So I'll shoot the first one to you, Benno, which is there's a question here about when you're selecting trees for this afforestation program that's going on now. I know under the Saudi Green Initiative, they're looking to plant something like 10 billion trees with a B, not an M. How does one go about selecting trees in terms of species? In other words, do you prefer trees that have better carbon sequestration capabilities over survivability? Are they mutually exclusive? I mean, how does one go about picking the best tree to survive in KSA?
Yeah, thank you for that. There's two generic answers that I would like to give. First, one is that I think that we should lean on the teaching from the Holy Quran. I think it's very, very important. Second, we should lean on the teaching from the ancient Arabs, like, for example, the Hema system, which is one of the oldest nature conservation in the world, coming from Arabia at large. But we should also lean on science, and that is very, very important. So any large-scale project should involve people like myself. I have, as you said before, 35 years of background, 25 of which was in the Arabian Peninsula. I lived 7 years in the Emirates, 12 years in Qatar, and 3 years in Saudi. So please reach out to the professionals, not necessarily to me. There are many, many others, and really, really good ones. Ask them which species to use, but even more important, ask them which species not to use. So let me give you one example. Mesquite, Prosopis juliflora. It is a plant species that was introduced with good intention from people in Central America, in Mexico in particular. And it has now become one of the most alien invasive species, not only in the Arabian Peninsula, wherever it's moist, but as a matter of fact, everywhere between Bhutan, Nepal in the north, and all the way down to South Africa in the south. And it's outcompeting, Prosopis juliflora is outcompeting the native Prosopis cineraria, which is a flagship conservation tree in the Arabian Peninsula, in Oman, in Saudi, in Qatar, in the Emirates, which is a plant that is very important for wildlife, but also for the ancient Bedouins, because leaves can be eaten by humans, seed pods can be consumed, and it provides formidable habitat for a number of wildlife, including birds, but also insects, arthropods, which then function as a food source for the birds and other wildlife. So putting together any plantation themes, it should definitely go beyond the glamorous statements of, oh, we are planting 12 billion trees, aren't we great? It should start
only to find that 50% of them are dead the next year. Yeah.
Why do we want to do it? How do we want to do it? And which water resources do we want to use? I would therefore very much advocate for mangroves, and first of all for the restoration of mangroves, those that we lost. And if we want to plant trees, please, please, please don't just think it's so easy to do it. It's very, very complex professional work that must be based on science.
Excellent. Good, great response. And just to confirm that, I mean, we have the same problem here in the UK with something called Japanese knotweed that they introduced. Big mistake. They're finding the only way to get rid of it is to incinerate the actual invasive species in question. If I could bounce one off Laith now, I've got a question here that says something about have you produced a priority list of required mitigation measures to address the negative impact associated with wind turbine generators? In other words, either onshore or offshore, to counter issues such as habitat loss, fragmentation versus avian wildlife mortality rates, indirect impacts from noise, vibration, something called light flicker. I guess that's the land side, etc. So in other words, is there a pretty well a go-to list of mitigation measures? You mentioned one about painting one blade black, but I'm sure there's much more that you can address.
Thank you, John. Yeah, and thank you, Benno, for the excellent presentation. Although we are all biodiversity, lovers, so being birds, flora, or fauna, it's all fun and great to learn from you. Yeah, thank you, John. Well, there are general mitigation. There isn't, as we said, there isn't like this reference book that gives you the answers for all the questions. Different sites have different requirements, but there are general approaches that are also can be implemented. But is there a one? The short answer is no. There is no one reference book that you can go to find the solutions.
Like a silver bullet.
Yeah, there is no silver bullet. This is the main idea. But there are many global guidelines about pre-construction and operational monitoring and for the mitigation measures. And the most important thing, and that's one thing, maybe just a general note, and I think it might answer some of the questions that I've seen on the chat, is that pre-construction monitoring is important. Of course, it's important, but it is short term. It's normally in different parts of the world, it's required in a different duration, sometimes 1 year, sometimes 2 seasons, sometimes 3 years. It depends which country you're working on. But the most important thing is adaptive management during the operation, because the wind farms are there for a long time, relatively speaking. 30 years, 20 years is a long time, and monitoring and mitigation measures are there and should be implemented. And this is really key. And it comes to relate it to our part of the world. A lot of our projects are donor or lender led, let's say. They are it's not developers who come in and develop their own projects. So the lender has their own global standards that needs to be followed. But what's important is that sometimes this stops when the money is paid back. And then comes the question, can the governments support the continuation of the operational monitoring? And that needs to be reflected in the legislations and the laws. So if there are, in a bad scenario, which is applicable in many parts, in many countries of our part of the world, if the lender comes in, he makes sure that things are going quite well for a period of time. The developer pays back the money. The lender pulls out. There is no legislation, and nothing happens after that. Nobody knows what's happening. And that's a key one. So legislation, national legislation is very important to make sure that we know, even if there are impacts, we know the weight of those impacts. We know how much negative impacts there are, how much positive impacts there are. Another point, and also sorry for taking too much time, but I was looking at the questions and I'm trying to find very general answers to answer as much as possible from the questions I've seen. Another very important point is about the implementation of the monitoring for the different species. It comes, again, it's adaptive management. It takes time to understand, and it's very important to have everybody pitching in. The global standards generally are general. They are global standards. They cannot be tailored. You have to tailor them by taking into consideration what's happening on the ground and the general context and the low social context and the local context and the species that are there. Are there any species that are globally threatened in our part of the world that are impacted? Yes. Do we know a lot? Sometimes we don't, and that's the key question I want to deliver, and then I will stop talking. And that is a lot of our research, especially in our part of the world, publication and science sharing and knowledge sharing is very, very limited, because companies and developers are very, I would say, excuse me for using the word, but scared to use their information, to share their experience, because they don't want to be shot at or they want to be criticized. So they are always trying to keep it as, keep their cards closer to their chest. And so nobody knows if there is what is really happening. Are we seeing some success stories or not? Sharing success stories with a bit of failures is a good thing for people to learn from, rather than keeping them being afraid of those short failures or small failures, because we all make mistakes. And again, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but it's all about adaptive management and learning from our mistakes in the very general term. And I'll stop here.
Thanks, Laith. I mean, I think you've addressed that really well, and it's all about balance. It's all yin and yang in life. And the one thing I would point out from my own experience, past 4 decades in environmental engineering, when you look at the acronym HSE, S is this huge thing, flashing font size 5 billion. Occupational health is not far behind. Environment's always been these, and again, the little green shoots off in the corner. So it's always very difficult to get that environmental message across. Just, I'm looking at the time here. I'm going to give you the last question back to you, Benno. This is from Mohammed Atab. He says there's a huge developments going on in the Red Sea and mangroves are at risk, although efforts are being taken to protect and replant, but the survival rate is the big question. It's kind of what I alluded to earlier. Still lacking data. Secondly, the quantification of ecosystem services provided by mangroves, such as carbon sequestration and storage, is largely lacking in many assessments. Is there a strategy for monitoring these kind of programs developed within UNESCO for KSA? And has there been any data sharing in terms of loss and gain on ecosystem functionality?
Thank you,
that was
John.
You, Benno.
That was a number of questions in one question. I appreciate
Sorry,
the question.
he really packed it in there. He knows we're running out of time.
Let me just reiterate or confirm what Leith Al-Mughrabi just said. It's all about balance. That is of the utmost importance, and it's actually a quote from the Holy Quran. Do not disturb the balance. If I'm not wrong, I hope I'm not wrong, but I studied the Quran for citations to environment and vegetation and water, and if I remember correctly, that's one of the quotations. Do not disturb the balance. For us ecologists and zoologists and botanists and physical geographers and geologists and hydrologists and so on, it is very clear, do not disturb the balance. That's the most important thing. That also refers to the question that we just had from the gentleman that you mentioned regarding the Red Sea mangrove project. We have to figure out, when it comes to mangrove plantation, why do we want to plant them? Where do we want to plant them? Where do we not want to plant them? Which species do we want to take? Within the species, which genetic variety do we want to take? And it is much, much more complex. Therefore, all the nature lovers, which do not have a background on university level, they might have very good intention. But really, we need to have professionals. If I have toothache, where do I go? I go to a university-educated dentist. I don't go to a bricklayer, all right? I go to a dentist. The same thing is true for us. If you have an issue with birds or with vegetation flora, come to us. Well, that's what we went to university for. We know better than most nature lovers. Most, not all. There are some nature lovers which are really on university level. I have to admit that. But for mangroves, I believe there are some strategies in Saudi Arabia, also in the United Arab Emirates. Qatar is also picking up now. Kuwait and Bahrain, they have very small numbers of mangroves, as I pointed out in my presentation. Oman is picking up. But we cannot just plant mangroves everywhere, left, right, and center. We need to find out where have they been disseminated, where have we lost mangrove ecosystems, and why and how do we want to restore them with which species. If we just plant them everywhere, we could also cause damage to other important ecosystems, such as salt marshes, such as coral reefs, such as even Sapka. Sapka can be very productive. And the blue-green algal mats are very important in Sapka for a whole range of reasons, but that would perhaps require carrying out another Sapka conference. We carried one of them out in the year 2006. We had the first international conference on Sapka ecosystems in Tunisia. More recently, we had the first conference on blue carbon ecosystems in Yokohama, followed by another one in China, and then last December in Abu Dhabi. Those of you who would like to learn how to plant mangrove where, go to the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi. They had, I think, 500 or 600 people last December in Abu Dhabi, and many of them are professionals, and they could give you advice on how to plant mangroves and how not to plant mangroves and how to restore them. Reach out to me. I'm very happy to connect you to Nasreen Al-Zakhlawi, Amna Al-Mansouri, and others from the Environment Agency Abu Dhabi. I'm not saying that the Saudis don't also have capacity. Of course they do. But it really, we need to bring together the global knowledge on mangrove ecosystem. We must not just plant mangroves left, right, and center. We really need to know where to plant them, how to plant them, which species, where not to plant them, just like with the trees on land. And one more point, if I may, John.
Sure.
Dr. Ron Lockland here and myself, we went to the Red Sea state of Sudan some time ago, and we couldn't believe how immensely Prosopis juliflora was spreading out all over the Red Sea state of Sudan. And then we said, listen, guys, you can't eradicate it. It is impossible. And we know that it's impossible, but you can control it. You can control it by establishing certified, environmentally friendly charcoaleries in conjunction with the national authorities for environmental conservation. So the same thing could be done in Saudi. Saudi, I think, has at least 1 or 2 or 3 different environment authorities. So please reach out to them. And if they want, then they can reach out to UNESCO. We would be more than happy to try our best to be of catalytic and scientific assistance.
Such a positive answer. Really, really appreciate that, Dr. Barr. Well, I think looking at the clock, I think we've kept to our time management promises. So I would like to, before I hand over to Amir for his last words as MD, I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. Obviously, special thanks to both of our guest speakers for sharing their incredibly valuable insights, and to you, our audience, for your engagement today. So we hope you found this inaugural webinar on behalf of Statera informative and hopefully inspiring as well. And Amir, can we have some closing thoughts from you, good sir?
Thank you, John. Nothing much from my side beside the idea that I'm very, and the team at Statera, overwhelmed and happy with the attendance today. And mostly due to the caliber of the speakers, the keynote speakers, and the interest in Kingdom and outside by all professionals who attended today to the topics that we chose. And I think biodiversity is a topic that is very hot at the moment and needs to be addressed from multiple angles, which we tried to do today, but always the limitation of time can put some constraints on the speakers. But this is an area that will be coming back to every now and then in the upcoming webinars, which I'll be asking everyone to keep a close eye on our LinkedIn page. Most probably in a month or two time, hopefully you will see a new webinar coming, or maybe another kind of event, depending on the plan. So thank you very much for attendance, and to you back, John. Thank you very much.
Again, Amir, succinct as always. And with that being said, I'll close today's webinar and thank everyone for attending today's truly informative session. Please, as Amir says, do keep an eye on LinkedIn for the next webinar in the series. It'll be focusing on oil and gas, primarily in KSA, dealing with legacy waste assessment and remediation, something that's very close to my own heart. And that'll be scheduled, as Amir's indicated, somewhere November, early December of Q4 2025. So all the best from all of us at Statera to all of you everywhere. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Shukran
Cheerio.
jazilan. Masalama.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.